Every process has a cycle. Every journey is a circle. The whole, though broken into a variety of separate distinctions, is a circular journey through polarity, back to unity, back to wholeness. You can look at the journey around the planet. You set out east, and if you keep going in the same direction long enough, you'll come along from the western side. You can look at the maturation process from child, the unconditional yes, to adolescence, the rebellious, reactive no, to synthesis, and you've taken the journey. You can look at the breath. Taking air in, holding, and releasing, completing the circle. Waking up, going through the day, going through sleep, waking up. It's a journey. Everything is a cycle from one polarity to another. Now, each of us have templates in our circular journeys. An arena which usually formed in the blessing or trauma of early childhood that set the template, that set the shape through which we navigate that circle. There's a circle in the birthing process. There's a circle in the birth to death process. There's a circle in every relationship. Every relationship begins with a preconceptual opening, then a conceptual opening, then an opening, then a maturing, then a dying, a waning, and finally a release. Every relationship ultimately dies by physical death or by mental, emotional, and logistical death. It is no more. The template out of which we navigate life contains trauma. And within trauma is dissociation and survival coping strategies. So when you have a traumatic event, the identity that you primarily identify with, your pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, and doing, the pattern that you identify with, when you have trauma, that pattern is disrupted. And in disrupting that pattern, an energy field that is larger than your identity engages with the identity and causes a break, causes the threat of dissolution of identity. You can think of this as, an iPad or a smartphone has 5.2 volts at 1 amp or 2 amp. That's an energy mass that will charge and recharge the identity of the phone. It will restore its habit of expression. Now, if you only have 2 volts and half an amp at 2 volts, it doesn't charge the phone. It doesn't restore its identity. If, on the other hand, you have 70 volts at 3 amps, the phone may catch fire or disconnect. The identity is overloaded. And this is what a traumatic event is in the life of a child. Now, when a traumatic event occurs in the life of a child, you have dissociation, you have destruction, sometimes you have death, sometimes you have dismemberment. But the larger energy force with which the identity collides is such that the identity does not survive in its original formation. And when in a materialistic, egotistical culture, a person primarily identifies with their identity, you see, because there's a series of different levels. There's the identity, and then there's the one who witnesses the identity. And there's the one who witnesses the one who witnesses the identity. There's different formations, and there's the individual, and then there's the family that gives rise to the individual, and there's the cult that gives rise to the family. And there's the species that gives rise to the cult. And there's the planet that gives rise to the species. So the one does not exist without the other. You don't have an individual without a planet to give rise to a species, to give rise to a cult or culture, to give rise to a family, to give rise to an individual. You don't have an individual without parents, without community. So the individual does not exist without the larger self, so to speak, the ecological framework out of which it emerges. And when we are primarily identified with the finite ego, the finite individual self, it's very easy to be traumatized. Because statistically speaking, the identity, the individual, the specific family, the specific culture, even the specific species, will change. And in its transformation, experience a death of the old, and the birth of something new. It will change. Now, when we experience that change as us dying, there's a tremendous panic, a tremendous reactivity as the ego, as the individual identity seeks to survive. And that's the process that goes on there. We dissociate, we forget, we accommodate. We go through a variety of different postures as we encounter this energy that is larger than the individual self, and that seeks to survive in some form. Now, this happening in early childhood sets a template in place. So maybe we're open to things and we're letting it in, and that's where the trauma occurred. We took in a deep breath and we got stuck. Maybe the bones and the muscles of the vagina in the birthing process wouldn't let us breathe. So we take in a breath, we get stuck. And we think we're going to die. It looks like our identity is going to die. And we get stuck, and then push, and then there's a release. And when this is a deeply traumatic event, this can become a template. Whereas we start to open up to something, then we expect to die. And avoid all movement for a timeless period of time. One of the characteristics of trauma is it feels and is timeless, because it's bigger than the self. In order to have a sense of time, we have to have a second hand moving in relation to an hour hand, to a minute hand, to numbers on the clock. But when you get flooded, when you lose perspective, there's nothing but that second. The second hand gets closer and closer until all you can see is the second hand. And there's no end, and it feels eternal, it feels timeless. The object has become too big to be observed and measured with perspective. And as that all-consuming object, things lose context. A small thing becomes everything. Now, one of the ways that we cope as grown-up individuals is by managing one of the primary and core desires and feelings of every traumatized individual, particularly in infancy, is I never want to feel that way again. I never want to feel like I'm going to stop existing. I never want to feel like who I am is hated, despised, unwanted, unloved, that my deepest needs are someone else's deepest disgust, that my deepest need for freedom is ignored in this timeless, I never want to feel that way again. And so the answer to this question, what do I have to do? What do I have to think? How do I have to feel so as to never feel this way again, takes us in a journey of defense from this terrain that's part of life. It's not all of life, but there are moments in life where things die. There are moments in life where things are stuck. There are moments in life where the intensity is too big for the individual. And there are these moments. And the question is, how do we respond to our primary desire never to feel those moments, never to experience those moments again? We can stay very small in familiar terrain, because the more we stay in one place, the more we understand it, the less surprised we are. And so we can stay in one space. We can stay in one feeling. For example, if I never want to experience the ephemeral death of joy, I can stay in anger. It's a very easy emotion to maintain, and I'll never have to face the ephemeral transformation, the death of joy. It's replaced by sadness, the beauty of a child, replaced by the sadness as the bully intercedes to take away that innocence, the beauty of that innocence, the sadness of it being ripped away by the bully, already embodied, already reenacted as the cult social ecosphere rips away the innocence of the individual, passed down and fractally represented as the bully rips away the innocence of the infant. I don't want to feel that sadness, so I'll be angry. Bullying must be stopped. Hit the bully. Bully the bully, right? And I'm going to avoid that helplessness, that sadness, by asserting, by fixating on a certain feeling and the thoughts that produce the feeling, because all feelings are produced by thoughts combined with sensations. So I have to fixate on the thoughts that will produce the feelings. And now I have a defense against the ephemeral transition from innocence the ephemeral transition from innocence to beauty, to wonder, and to loss, to sadness. Similarly, in the manifestation process, you have an idea, you have a desire that has to move through a cross-referencing of is it possible, and do you have the skills, and what might you do, and you move towards an idea realizing itself, manifesting, and then there's this birth process where you have to take a certain amount of action, you have to spend a certain amount of money, do a certain number of things to make it substantive, to bring it out, and I freeze in that terrain. I don't want to do it. Because in the template, actually manifesting, bringing something out into the world for all to see is met with trauma. As the child brought a sound out, they were hit. As the child brought an activity out, or running, they were hit by a car. They were hit by a scared parent. Don't run into the street. Shaking. And the energy overloaded. And the child, I never want to feel that way again. I can't let this manifestation take place. I can't complete the breath of manifestation. And so I have a new idea, and then a new idea, and a new idea. But when it comes time to bring it out into the world, I get stuck. So what do I do then? I freeze. I freeze. I freeze. And then a new idea. Oh, good. I can go and think about that and work on this and this. And at that moment when the idea has to take form, I cringe up, I freeze, because I got hit with criticism, with judgment, with a car, with pain, with shame, with disgust. And I thought I was going to die. The identity that I identified with came under threat, and I thought I would die. So in this formation, in this process, we have a template and we have a trauma. We have a circle and we have a stuck place. And we have a defense mechanism to avoid re-experiencing the stuck place, or to go through the stuck place endlessly and not be able to escape it, to avoid being shocked by the stuck place. The circle arrests at a certain point. We dissociate, we control, we obsess, we addict, we avoid breathing, we hold, we freeze, we fight, we run in the fight, flight, freeze, fawn template. Anything not to get stuck in that place. Now, one of the ways that we can do this is we can change jobs. For example, I get in a job, I move very fast, I'm growing in this and that, and then I start to reach this point of maxing out where I can't sustain that particular frenetic pace. Where people who are saying, wow, look at the new upstart, say, let's move on. There's a new upstart. I've lost the attention. For some people, this is the trauma in early childhood. Then there was another child that took the attention away. I wasn't the special one. And I'm not going to experience that ever again. So they leave their job and get a new job and go through the 6-month cycle, the 1-year cycle, and get a new job and get a new job and get a new job, so that I don't go through that terrain. I never want to experience that feeling that something's wrong and I don't know what it is, and I don't feel the same passion I have felt before. I don't want to feel that, and I keep feeling that in relationship. I don't want to feel it. So I get a new relationship, and a new relationship, and a new relationship, and a new relationship. My obsession is not feeling that feeling that is part of the relationship process. I take another breath. I breathe anxiously, or I breathe out, and I don't want to breathe. I don't want to let something in again. I just want to breathe very shallow. I don't want to feel what that feeling is. Every time something happens and I finally come back to this part in my body and I don't want to feel it, so I drink alcohol, I numb out, I take painkillers to kill the pain. I don't want to feel that discomfort. And this can happen in metaphysics as well, in books. Like, I don't want to feel this and this and this. I don't want to have this. I don't want to have this situation with, I don't want to feel like I'm failing. So I'm going to get another book. I don't want to feel like this feeling. So I'm going to get another teacher, another guru, another religion, new family, a new item. Like, I bought this piece of clothing and it was wonderful, and then it was this, and I want another piece of clothing and another piece of clothing, because I don't want to feel like I'm old. I don't want to feel like things are slowing down. I don't want to feel that way. So what's valuable to understand is that this tends to have a template around it, that there is an area in the circle that is stuck, that has trauma, that we cannot be present to in our past, in our future, in our fears, in our body, in our memories. We cannot be present to that terrain of the circle. And so every breath, we rush over that part and don't look. Every time someone comes towards us, we leave our body and dissociate until they're gone, and then we, oh my goodness, it's past. Every new job goes through this cycle, and then we leave or quit or get fired so that we don't have to. Every relationship goes through this. And if we can identify what that terrain is that we're committed not to feeling, that we're committed not to re-experiencing, and where it fits in that circle, the in-breath and the out-breath, one of the things we can do is avoid the trauma in relationship. This is one reason trauma is a viral meme, because as we're committed to avoiding this terrain in relationship, and then another person is committed to avoiding that same terrain in relationship, and a person is opening up into relationship with us, and then we cut them off right at that point. We cut them off right at that point. We cut them off right at that point. And other people cut them off right at that point. Eventually, they also are terrified of getting to that point of relationship and being cut off in a way that takes them outside their control. It's like the identity that dies. When any relationship dies, an identity dies. Because we have a unique identity with every person. A unique habit of thinking, feeling, speaking, and doing. You could also say of sensing. A unique habit of sensing. You make love with someone, your body responds differently. You make love differently to every single human being. You think differently with every single person you talk with. Something begins to be born, a new identity when you come into proximity when you come into intimacy with another human being. Something begins to be born, and it is a pattern of sustained thought, feeling, sensing, doing, talking. It's a sustained pattern. It's an identity. And when an identity emerges in a new relationship with a job, with a country, with a person, we say, oh, I like this identity. I feel good, is what it means. I feel better in this pattern of energy than I do in this pattern of energy. I like this part of who I am. I don't like this part. I don't like the way I feel around you. I don't like the way I talk around you. I go into worrying about what I can say and not say, and I don't like worrying. Over with this other person, I open up and relax and feel this, and we laugh and we play, and I like that because it feels good. It feels good to have this identity. And there are certain truths, like we can talk about this, but we can't talk about this. There's a pattern of identity that gets formed with every space, with every person, with every job, with every country, with every culture, that changes, that is lost when the relationship is lost. So, when we are stuck in avoiding a certain terrain, if we spend enough time in any relationship, in any space, we will go throughout the entirety of the circle. It's as if there is on the planet. There is a war, there is a terror, there is a rape, there is a loneliness, there is a betrayal, there is bombing happening at some point in some place on the planet at any given moment. There's an act of terror, an act of war in some place on the planet at any given moment. And if we don't want to feel that, if we don't want to know what that's like, if we want to avoid that, well, you take a plane somewhere else, because there's also a moment, a time, a place, somewhere on the globe where there's lush tropical jungle and there is no war. But of course, if you're running, what if it comes and gets you there? If your primary focus is on running away from what could happen, I never want to see this, I don't want to think this, I don't want to feel it, I don't want to remember it. If you're constantly running from something, how can you build a sustainable life? And so you can experience the ultimate trauma of failing to run away. For example, if you run to a tropical jungle because you want to avoid this, and then you run from work because there are bullying bosses, and you run from money because someone might steal it from you, or this, or you might be whatever it is, and you run into the jungle. And then you might encounter a snake that you don't understand, or you might encounter 10,000 ants that start to bite, and there's no escape. There's no escape. How do I get out of this sense of, I never want to feel this way again? It's one of the reasons that nesting or circling in a safe place is so important. To have 5 or 6 people or a compassionate listener be with you in that place you never want to feel. To be with you together and feel it together and look at it together and say, aha, this is that space. This is that space that I never want to feel again, but here it is, I'm feeling it again. But I'm with someone. someone who's protecting me from the overwhelm of going into that place. An identity dies, and if it is a cherished identity, an identity that we want, we desire, I like this identity. The way I feel in my orgasm after making love with you, I want it. I don't want it to die. So I want more. I want more. I want more. And I don't want anything to get in the way. Your friends are the enemy because maybe you get too tired afterwards and this and this. And I want more. I want that identity. Perhaps because it protects me from another identity that I'm afraid of, another pattern of energy. I get bored, I get lonely, I get depressed, I get sad, I get paranoid when I'm alone. But with you, I feel this and I feel this and I feel this and I want this and I don't want this. I need this and I don't want to have this. And in a psychologically illiterate culture, I don't know another way of working with this. This is all that I know, to cling to the locations and people that bring about an identity that feels good. Because I don't want them to go away. And because people go away from me when I tell the truth. When I tell the truth, they think, they judge, they go away from me. And I tell lies. What do you want to hear? What would make you stay with me? What would make you choose me? So that you won't go away. So I won't experience this identity and I'll experience this identity. The thing to be aware of is in the circle, there is polarity. To have true freedom of movement, one must be able to encounter and engage with whatever is happening at any point on the planet. To have true freedom of thought, one must be able to remember every one of our memories and understand its place, that it's not everything and it's not nothing, it is part of energy in pattern. And to understand that all of us to some degree, be it in spirituality, be it in music. I only want to listen to the uplifting music and this and that. I never want to get that off. That's depressing. That's sad. I want to go up, 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 up. I want to go faster and step longer and drink more coffee. And then I collapse. I collapse. Then I go faster and drink up and step, drink more, and I collapse. We must complete the circle. And part of what life in duality, life in paradox, life in the circle is all about is being able to embrace the grace of the breath. To let food come into my body, nourish my body, and vacate my body with grace. And I don't have to hang on to the food in the constipation of, don't let it go. I don't want to change. I don't want to let go. I don't have to avoid it. I don't want to taste anything. I don't want to eat. I don't want to no. I don't want to go out of the house. I don't want to go out and taste the world. No. That I can, with grace, with help, ask for help. The planet is part of our host body. The energy field is part of the planet's host body. Our culture is part of our family's host body, our family. The specialized professionals that our cult produces, therapists and healers, etc., is part of the host body to ask for help, to move through that stuck point, because as long as we are primarily fixated on I never want to feel this way again, then the entire cycle of breath, of a lifetime, of a travel pattern, of an emotional pattern, of a relational pattern is fixated on avoiding part of the terrain. We cannot live fully. We cannot let go fully what we will not take in. We cannot grieve fully what we cannot feel. We cannot change and integrate that energy and transcend it, become bigger. We cannot become bigger than what we are committed to avoiding. What we are committed to avoiding is something that we cannot become bigger and grow through. And in the journey of consciousness, to identify with this very, very small infant that is me, and then grow up into a larger body, and then to learn about the larger ecology, to learn about the larger bodies of which we are a part. We cannot assimilate, we cannot integrate, we cannot reassociate, we cannot attune with, we cannot partner with, we cannot synergize with that which we are committed to denying, committed to avoiding, committed to holding on to. Either I want this or I don't want it. The commitment to fixation, to obsession. I will do anything to avoid this terrain. I will drink, I will drug, I will run, I will spend money, I will make money, I will rush around manically, just avoiding one point on the circle, where in our template, a larger energy encountered us and seemed to threaten death.